Hello everyone, I'm Tom Wiknich with KZGN-TV and Ridgecrest Talk. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a special guest, Rear Admiral Corey from the Naval Air Weapons Center, Weapons Division at China Lake, and Point Mugu really. And want to welcome you, sir, to joining us tonight. And we really appreciate you taking the time to come and join us tonight. I'd like to get some information about you. Let's see, you took over, change of command was in October, right?
It was. In fact, about 9:35 a.m. on the 29th of October, but who's counting?
I was there. I think it was 9:36. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it was in the morning. It was a beautiful day, too.
It was.
It was a great day.
Most days are beautiful in China Lake.
Oh, what a guy. Thank you, sir. So anyway, can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you wind up here at China Lake?
Yeah.
What have you done in the Navy?
Absolutely. So I've been in the Navy a little over 30 years. This is my third time in China Lake.
Okay.
So I've been an F-18 pilot most of my Navy career, and after test pilot school I was assigned out here as a lieutenant, and I did worked on teams that, well, first of all, I just finished up service in VFA 86 on the East Coast. Part of that was Desert Storm, and so I came here when most of the activity on this base was taking action on lessons from Desert Storm. So we had a lot of things work very well in that conflict, but a lot of things didn't work as well as we needed them to. So I was very fortunate to work with some fantastic engineers and scientists on this base on what the press now calls smart bombs. But we talked about GPS-guided air-to-ground munitions like JDAM and JSOW and SLAM-ER, new radars, new sensors, and it was a fantastic 2 years in the mid-90s. I was able to go back into the fleet as a department head then, go back and deploy, and I was fortunate enough to be assigned to VFA 146, who had the newest airplanes in the Navy at the time. And we were the first airplanes equipped with GPS, or Global Positioning System, brand new radar, all of which I had tested right here at China Lake. So I knew what worked, I knew what didn't quite work, and I was able to go to sea and take those new capabilities back to the fleet. A few years later, I came back again, this time as a senior lieutenant commander and commander, and I did much of the same work on new products. Went back to sea as a squadron commanding officer in Japan. Went back into Iraq in what became Operation Iraqi Freedom, and again using all of the things that had been developed here on this base by these fantastic people, and now some 14 years later to come back as a commander of Weapons Division. It's a job I never even allowed myself to dream to have. So I couldn't. Debbie and I couldn't be happier to be back out here, reconnecting with old friends, and to be back with this amazing workforce.
Well, since it's your third time you're coming back here, you don't have to get used to the place. You've been here before.
Yeah.
So you're used to the desert environment and the small town of Ridgecrest. How do you like the small environment that we have here?
We love it here. You know, first of all, we have served all over the country and outside, as I mentioned, in Japan. And we've been blessed with communities that have supported the Navy's mission. It's not that way throughout the world, but everywhere we have been, it has been like that. But nothing compares to what I see here in Ridgecrest. To a large extent, there's a very supportive community in Point Mugu, but this being a smaller community, this base being more closely connected to the community, it is really, in my experience, I've never seen anything even close. The support we get from the community, I can't go to any location throughout, whether it's a store or whether it's a sporting event, without seeing our employees or the children of our employees. I've met fourth generation China Lake employees.
Okay. Wow.
That's the record for me so far.
Wow.
And I'm sure there's somebody that's beat that record, but I haven't
No,
personally run into them. So it is there's certainly things we can do better, and we're working on that with the leadership out in town. But couldn't be happier to be assigned here, especially right now, at this time.
Now, being the Admiral, you're over China Lake and Point Mugu. How do you see the relationship between China Lake and Point Mugu at this time?
I think it's better than it ever has been. Born out of World War II, very different missions, but over the years, those missions have come closer and closer together. Our weapons systems, our airplanes, our radars are all much more complicated than they used to be. When this place started, we had F-4 Corsairs. In fact, I saw a picture of one parked right downtown next to what used to be the USO building.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So obviously it's a much different world right now. We do not taxi F-18s downtown.
Oh, come on. Why don't you bring one down for us?
We have brought them down, but we brought them down under tow. But our missions are much more closely aligned. So we are one unbroken, well, we're broken by mountains physically, but
right.
in terms of our workforce, we're one unbroken workforce. And things are going very well.
Mm-hmm. How are you getting adjusted as far as being the Admiral over the bases now, and with the people? Are you getting out to see them out at all? Or, I know you're just here, but are you getting out to see the people?
Well, I'm sure trying. I have been out to see an awful lot so far, but I've been called away to other. The Navy has me doing other duties besides just being a commander here. So I haven't gotten out as much as I'd like to. I'm going to continue to work on that. But I've been out to the South Range. I've been out to San Nicolas Island, which is off the coast. We've got really dedicated people out there. They spend upwards of 250 days a year away from their families supporting our mission.
Right.
So it was important to see them very early on and to understand their needs. I've been up to the North Range, up in the area of the petroglyphs. I know the community gets out there when we can open that up. But we have it's a very important part of our mission that is about an hour's drive north from the town proper.
Right.
We've had all-hands discussions both here at China Lake and at Point Mugu, where I've been able to mostly listen, quite frankly, to this workforce, as well as carry the message our CNO has brought forward. So we have a new CNO. Admiral John Richardson. Okay,
I'm going to have to stop you there. We're going to have to go to a hard break here. So let's pick up on that when we come back after the break.
Great.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here tonight with Admiral Corey from the Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division, China Lake and Point Mugu. And we're going to continue on. Okay, when we had to take a break, you were talking about the work you were having to do for the CNO. Go ahead with that.
So we have, first of all, Vice Admiral Paul Grossklags has taken over NavAir a few months ago, and about the same time we got a new CNO, Admiral Richardson. And both of them have given our command a task which, quite frankly, I couldn't be more happy about. The world is a dangerous place right now. You pick up the papers, or you turn on wherever you get your news via the web,
or KZGN.
Exactly, and people, they hear about whether most people say ISIS. I prefer to call them the Daesh. All over the Middle East is a trouble spot. We have a resurgent Russia creating a lot of trouble in Europe, and of course we have the Chinese trying to find their way as a rising power. So the demands on our naval forces, the demands on all of our armed forces, are continuing to increase, and it is a real challenge to stay ahead technology-wise or training-wise, which is what our command does. We do not want our warfighters to have a fair fight. When they are called upon to enter any conflict, we want them to have the very best that they have had, as I did when I was called upon. So they've asked us to produce weapons faster and cheaper and to make them work right the first time. And our workforce is really stepping into that with their full force, and I couldn't be more excited to work on it with them.
Right. I remember when I worked out there, the emphasis was commercial off the shelf. You know, quick, build it fast, but as much commercial as you can put into it.
Right, and much of that worked. Okay, so there was real reason at that time to take that action, but some of it didn't work, and so we are applying those lessons. Much of commercial off the shelf, it's not made to withstand catapults and arrested landing on an F-18. Right, 40 Gs is what we have to withstand in the cockpit. Your iPhone
40 Gs?
40 Gs.
Oh my God.
And so your iPhone is not built to that standard, right?
Okay.
So we can't, our people have to understand where we need to adapt commercial technology. And we also need to have technical competence inside our workforce. So we are reinvigorating that technical competence. Many people here that I've met lived it, but Sidewinder was invented here. We're to some extent going back to our past, if you will. We are creating our own prototypes. We're putting proposals forward to bring a lot more work back into the government workforce and to work with industry in a new way that we think can be, first of all, is going to work the first time, which is the most important, to give us that technological advantage, but also to deliver to the fleet faster and more affordably. There are people that challenge me and say you can't do all three. Our workforce can do all three. I'm confident, and we're going to.
I think you can. Yeah, you've got the right people working on it. I think you can do that. How's the workload coming as far as going out to the base? I mean, how are we doing out there?
So I think we're doing fantastic. We, first of all, you know, you see all in the press that our nation's, you know, our budgets are pressurized everywhere, whether you talk about roads or infrastructure, et cetera, and so is our Department of Defense. But locally here at China Lake, our workload is at least steady. If the demand is certainly growing. So what our leadership is working with our workforce is how can we be more productive? How can we, whether it's through automation or just approaching problems differently, much as we've seen in this great state up in Silicon Valley, if you approach a problem fundamentally differently, you can get a lot more productivity. So we have more than enough work to do. And in fact, we're hiring, which is unusual in many places in the government now.
Actually, I know because in my other business downstairs, I have new engineers coming in almost every day. Yes. They're just moving here from New Hampshire or wherever, and I'm surprised at how many people that I'm seeing just as a retail person in town, that the new people coming to town.
Well, that's back to the community that we described, right? We have a relationship with the community that is, you know, it's very beneficial. We bring a significant payroll to town. We bring some very educated people, and the community brings excellent schools and that sort of thing. So we expect to hire about 700 people between China Lake and Point Mugu this year. And a little over half of that is to cover attrition, because we have many very experienced people on the here that we hired years ago when the Department of Defense was bigger, that are nearing retirement age. But the rest of it is new skill sets and new growth, which is really exciting. You mentioned New Hampshire. We are recruiting from across the U.S. We're recruiting a lot of different skill areas that never were imagined in the 1940s when we came here. And we're recruiting from a diverse background, which is fantastic. It presents a challenge for us because we have this experience that is retiring, and we're trying to transfer that knowledge as fast as we can to the younger workforce that we have, because we, throughout mostly the 90s, there was about a 10-year gap where we didn't hire. So that creates a very difficult problem for us, but it's one that we're working our way through.
Yeah, that was when we had Scott O'Neill on. He had brought that up, that 10-year gap in hiring made that hole in the workforce, and it's just flowing up to the top now. Right. And now you're bringing in the younger engineers and getting them up to speed as quick as you can to help them up the mission of the base. in the Navy. So what I'm seeing though is it seems like some really nice guys coming in, and you say you're recruiting from all over the United States. How are you doing that? Are you advertising or sending out recruiters?
All of that. We are trying every idea that we have, because if we're to keep our technology edge, if we are to keep the products or that advantage that our warfighters have had, and we're going to do it faster and we're going to do it cheaper, we need new ideas. And those ideas aren't going to come from one or two schools, even though there are great colleges here in California. We're going to continue to go to those schools as well. But we need a diverse workforce with a diverse set of ideas. Right. And I'm glad you mentioned Scott O'Neill, because he's done a fantastic job.
I got to pause you there right now.
All right.
And because we're going to go to another break, and after that we'll pick up where you left off, okay? Stay with us, folks, and we'll be right back. Thanks for staying with us, everybody. I'm still here with Admiral Corey from the Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division. And when we went to break, you were talking about Scott O'Neill.
Yes. As I was saying, I'm glad you mentioned Scott O'Neill. Scott just finished 43 years of government service and nearly a decade as our executive director, our senior civilian. And we had his retirement ceremony just a short bit ago. And he has really set us up for the future. And so all of these things I was telling you about of getting, first of all, the approval to hire, justifying the need, and as well as setting us on the path to bring the right talent in, that was largely Scott O'Neill and the leadership team that he has developed. His successor is Ms. Joan Johnson. Okay. And she has come on board as my partner in this business. I understand you're going to have her out shortly.
Yes,
so,
we'd like to get her.
Hopefully everyone will get a chance to hear her ideas before long, and she's doing fantastic.
Okay.
So look forward to her new ideas and where we can take this place together.
All right, that sounds good. Sounds encouraging too. I was reading your bio a little bit, and I saw, what kind of airplanes have you flown in the past?
Yeah, so if you're after what we were talking about before we went on air, when I went through test pilot school, it was that narrow window of time when the wall had come down and the Soviet Union was crumbling, and our test pilot school had developed a very short relationship with the Soviet Air Force, and I was asked to go with my partner, now also a Rear Admiral in the Navy, Dale Horan, over to just outside of Moscow, Zhukovsky Air Base, and do a short flight test on a MiG-29. So we were able to fly the airplane twice, and we put our test pilot school education to use and did an evaluation of the airplane and wrote up a report. And for a guy who had just come out of the fleet and just a couple of months before I started test pilot school, I was flying over Bosnia, and I had MiG-29s on the other side of the border, a handful of miles away, and had spent a lot of time training on how I would fight the airplane. I was then fighting my buddy in another MiG-29. So it was a very fantastic experience, both culturally and certainly militarily, to get a chance to fly that airplane a couple of times.
It had to have been exciting. I mean, I can't even imagine being able to go over there and fly a MiG. What was their technology like compared to ours?
So they have a fundamental different approach. The Soviets did not expect their pilots to have the kind of education and the training that we do. So it's a much more simple airplane. It was a very rugged, very reliable airplane, quite frankly, which we did not expect the reliability. We watched the airplane fly over and over again with virtually no maintenance. It was not assembled nearly as well. The people in mostly St. Louis, Missouri at the time, in McDonnell Douglas, built F-18s to a much higher standard than theirs are built. But it was very rugged and very functional. But I wouldn't trade it for a minute for what our nation puts out in Hornets, Super Hornets, and F-35s.
Right. Let's talk about the F-35. What are we going to do to support the F-35 coming up?
Well, we're still working on that. So it is approaching first of all, the Marine Corps has declared their initial operation capability, or IOC as we say. Next, the Air Force will very shortly, and then the Navy will follow. And that was simply because we had the Super Hornet in production and that we could not do all three simultaneously, so that made sense. So we are very close to starting the operational test on the F-35C, which is a variant that's going to be put in place on our carriers. Our base here does an enormous amount of work on the range with that group, and we are in the process of developing plans for potentially a much broader role in the long-term sustainment of that airplane, which we'll be able to talk to you about in the coming years.
Okay. Yeah, because I hear they're going to base a wing out at Lemoore, right?
Well, I guess you would. We already have a strike fighter wing, so they will become part of the strike fighter wing in Lemoore. But there will be squadrons showing up in Lemoore before too long, and the West Coast part of our fighters will continue to deploy from there to our carriers and then throughout the world.
Okay. As a former range person that I was, we had a lot of testing from all the services in foreign countries. How's that evolving at this time? Are the services in foreign countries using us?
Absolutely. Our foreign military demand continues to grow. We have a long-term presence from Great Britain right now. We have the Canadians are on the base now. I know somebody told me they saw them at lunch. And then we'll get other countries coming in throughout the year. The demand for our ranges continues to increase, and what I've asked our range personnel for a set of ideas and plans to increase our ability to do more simultaneous operations. So, which is fantastic. We have this is a unique place out here. It's a national asset, and so that's why all services, as you mentioned, other government agencies. Special operations, as well as our foreign allies, will continue to come out here and do work on our ranges.
All right, sounds good. I know for one thing that we have so many different areas out on the base that do things that the people don't even know about out here, and it's always good to get somebody to come in here and tell us about some of those things. Are we doing anything new as far as any of our new weapons that we're working out here?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, let me take that opportunity. We had a community day this year. That was one of my first weeks here, and I thought Captain Wiley and his team did a fantastic job at opening up the base.
Right.
In today's security environment,
it was much nicer having the airfield open than having it headquarters.
And that was a lot of work. So I want to publicly congratulate his team. I thought they did a fantastic job. He's also building on that. I don't know if it's been put out publicly, but I'm going to do it now anyway. He and our team have received commitment from the Blue Angels to come in 2017.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So that is going to be wonderful. And so I hope the community and the broader Southwest region will have an opportunity to come out here. It's unclear to me whether it was the late 80s or the early 90s, but it's certainly been at least since the early 90s.
Right. I was here, and we're almost out of time, but I was here for the last Blue Angels, and I think they had like over 10,000 people come from all over this area to see that thing. It was a huge event. So it's really fantastic they're bringing them back here, because that was, I don't know, it was just huge, and I just remember all the people. It was very exciting. Yeah. Anyway, we're about wrapping it up. I want to thank you for coming in. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and especially early on in your work here.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the opportunity to share. As I said, I couldn't be more excited to be in this job in this place at this time, especially working with the people that we have out here on the base, and to have the support of this community. It's just fantastic. So as I tell my team, I don't know what the record is for the longest time in this job, but whatever it is, I want it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you, folks.